isn't the fundamental problem here that UNRWA is the organisation best equipped? I know you mentioned the aid agencies, but quite frankly, they don't have the same sort of access to the civilian population that UNRWA has done over many years. If they can reassure themselves that any links to Hamas have been removed, isn't that the best course of action to refund that UN agency?
Kieran, if they look at UNRWA and ultimately make a decision that funding through UNRWA can and should be reinstated, there are really both short and medium to longer term issues that need to be addressed. In the short term, Australia should only be providing any money back through UNRWA if it is done with very stringent conditions and clear tests to be able to authenticate and verify that those conditions are being met.
There have been calls for the Prime Minister to visit Israel and the areas affected by the October 7 attack, led by Josh Frydenberg, who was there last week. Does this really amount to much, though? What sort of impact would a visit by Anthony Albanese have at the latter stage of this terrible conflict?
I think these are important reflections. The kibbutz that Josh visited is the same that I visited, and is a very moving and indeed quite impactful place to visit, given it was the scene of such horrors on October 7. And whilst we are right to reflect and try to address the humanitarian needs in Gaza at present, none of that should be done in a context without also reflecting on what started this current conflict. There was no conflict in Gaza on October 6, but on October 7, Hamas launched the most brutal of attacks and killed more Jewish people on a single day than at any time since the Holocaust. And so if Anthony Albanese is able to add to any of his existing overseas commitments a visit to Israel, to visit those sites that Penny Wong did not visit, such as the kibbutz, such as Sderot, and parts of Israel that were the scene of those attacks, as well as, of course, rightly meeting with those seeking to try to achieve peaceful outcomes in the Palestinian territories, then that can help to demonstrate Australia's support for Israel, support for ultimately a long-term settlement that achieves peaceful outcomes for Israelis and Palestinian peoples alike. But I think for Australia's Jewish communities as well, who have been the subject of such an unfair and unacceptable rise in anti-Semitism, to see the Prime Minister take that step of solidarity with Israel in recognition of what occurred on October 7 would be long overdue, but very welcome.
Just finally, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said that Donald Trump has told him he won't give Ukraine a penny. So essentially warning that he would defund any support for the Ukrainian resistance. How concerned are you by those comments?
Kieran, obviously I'll leave domestic US politics as a matter where we respect the outcome of American voters. But I want to be clear that it would be a mistake for the United States to cease to support Ukraine. It would be a mistake that would have repercussions in terms of the way the United States is viewed around the world, and indeed the way in which democratic, like-minded nations are viewed around the world. It would only seek to empower autocracies, the likes of Vladimir Putin and potentially other nations who do need to have clear deterrence frameworks in place to ensure they don't repeat the type of horrors that we're seeing in Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign country with internationally recognised borders that Russia, under Vladimir Putin, chose to breach and has caused immense suffering in Ukraine in clear violation of international laws. And the last thing the world needs is a situation where Putin or others are further empowered at a time of immense global destabilisation from the actions of many other nations as well. The last thing the world needs is to see those types of leaders potentially empowered, thinking they can get away with undertaking the likes of actions that Putin has been responsible for.